thank you all so much for being here with us, and thank you, Carl, of course, for joining us. My name is Leslie Sarma. I'm from Singapore, and I'm the APAC lead for Global Tech Advocates. It's a real honor to be here today. And of course, the reason we're all actually here for this session is the amazing Carl Pei. He's someone that doesn't really require an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you a very brief one anyway, if that's okay. Carl is, of course, the founder and CEO of Nothing. Nothing launched the Nothing Ear in 2021, which was, of course, followed by the Nothing Phone 1 in 2022, followed by the Ear 2 in 2023, and most excitingly, the announcement of the Nothing Ear and Nothing Ear A just this past week in Tokyo. So congratulations on the announcement. It's amazing for us to have you here off the back of that. And it isn't actually on the agenda, but I'm wondering if you can give us just a brief description of what you're launching and what these new products look like.
So we've been making audio products since 2021, and over the years, they've gotten better for every generation. So last week, we announced the Nothing Ear and Nothing Ear A, the best audio products that we've ever created. So best sound quality, best performance, best quality, a design that we're really proud of, that we feel is really iconic and that our users love. But the part that I'm most excited about is because I see a lot of change. It's going to happen based on what's going on in AI. And I think that we have an important role to play in the transition of consumer tech products to being AI first. So the announcements last week, Nothing Ear and Nothing Ear A, it actually has native integration with ChatGPT. So you can just pinch and hold your earbuds and have a phone call with ChatGPT, just like a regular phone call. And then the fun part about it is we made these kind of products since 2021, and we announced that we're updating all our historical products to also support this new feature.
So I love that. I love that. It's very user-focused, I think, and I think it's very focused on accessibility and making sure we all get to use these products and use them to their fullest. And of course, it's an earpiece version of the white box we just had, where you can do this. You don't even need the big white box. You can do it just directly. Watching you thrive and watching all of this grow, I think is particularly exciting given the industry you work in. I think it goes without saying that in the industry you're in, it's traditionally dominated by a few big players. Can you talk to us a bit about your journey as a business and how you've sort of you've come up through this ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a very interesting industry. It's one that I've been really passionate about since I was a kid. I was the first among all my friends to get the iPod, first among all my friends to get the first iPhone. And a lot of those early products inspired me to pursue a career in this industry. But there's one big difference between this industry and a lot of other industries is that normally you have a spectrum of different types of companies, startups, mid-sized companies, and large companies. However, in the consumer tech space, there's only large companies because it's just too hard. The value chain is very long. There's so many things you have to worry about, from supply chain to manufacturing to design to hardware to software to marketing to sales to customer service. And you got to get each of those parts right in order to be able to create a company. So I think the entry barrier is very high. So unfortunately, if you only have big companies in a space, you have limited innovation. Like the more innovative companies of the past, they've all grown to be really big and created their positions, so they don't have to work as hard on the innovation front. They have to work more on their financials, making the next quarter, or protecting so that it's harder to switch away from their ecosystem to somebody else's. So I think so for us, the first step was actually to work on supply chain.
Right.
Supply chain is, it doesn't sound very exciting, but it's the core of everything we do, because if all the other brands are selling in excess of 100 million units every single year, and we're brand new, and we're like, hey, we have an idea to do something different, to be honest, we're met with a lot of skepticism. So many people have tried in the past, and they all raised a lot of money, and they all had superstar teams, and they all failed. And now here you come, like, how are you different? why would this work? Even the people more well-known than you have failed in similar endeavors before. So getting the supply chain right was, I think, the primary focus actually in the last 3 years. It's been a process because supply chain dictates your cash flow, right? So the later you can pay for the product, the better your cash flow is. And as a very young company, in the beginning, we had to pay way more in advance compared to everybody else. And that really limited the speed in which we could develop new products. And then there's the pricing, right? We compete with really big companies. They ship a lot of volume, so their pricing is way lower. It's really hard to compete with them when you have to pay like 25% more for components. So I would say the biggest progress we made in the last couple of years is we brought the cash flow terms closer to the bigger brands, and we brought the pricing down closer to the bigger brands, or else there's no way to compete.
It's really interesting because we're here to talk about AI in the age of these devices, which is a very sexy topic. But in fact, it's the sort of unsexy topic of supply chain that sits at the core of all of this, of how you're going to get to the innovation you want to get to, you have to go back to the nuts and bolts of building a business and building a global business. Is that what you spend most of your time on, are those practicalities, or do you feel that you're more focused on the bigger visionary pieces?
I think about a year ago, we got to a stage where we could think a little bit more about the future.
Yeah.
But the reason why we are okay with putting up for all this pain is because we believe that these devices are very important. We only want to make devices that people use a lot every single day, like the smartphone. Depending on the country, it's still the most used product.
Yeah.
In some countries use it for 4 hours a day, other countries 5.5 hours a day. There's no other personal computer that's more widely used than the smartphone. And if you just look at the shipment volume, like 1 billion are sold every year. Even for wireless earbuds, it's a big category.
Yeah.
300 million are shipped every year. We've been looking at the watch category, the smartwatch. I think it's about 75 million now. So, okay, the supply chain is very tough, but if you really want to do something innovative in personal computing, you have to own the entry point.
Yeah.
The product that the consumers use to interact with the OS.
Well, I mean, I don't want to tell you how many hours a day I use my smartphone. If five is where we're starting. You mentioned the visionary piece, and I think we do have to come back to sort of what you're doing and what we're all here today to talk about. It certainly feels as though we're in a sea change moment, that the incorporation of AI, as we saw earlier, into the way we build companies, but also in your sphere, into our personal computing devices, is going to be the revolution. Is that right? Is this really the sea change we think it is?
I believe so. I've seen people online saying it's like AI is like the invention of internet.
Yeah.
It's going to change our lives like the internet. But I actually believe it's going to change the world similar to how the invention of agriculture changed the world. I think it's going to be way bigger than that. It's going to reshuffle everybody's lives in all the industries. And I think I'm pretty excited about it because if you look at the human history, technology has always enabled us to do more as a species, like be it inventing the steam engine or electricity or the internet. It always enabled us to do a lot more, and I'm super excited to see how AI can enable us to do even more.
So it's an interesting point, and I'm skipping around in the order of our questions now, so forgive me, but you talk about the things that technology has enabled us to do. Here you are building devices that are going to change the world, incorporating technology that will change the world. Is there a responsibility with that? Because these things have the power to change the world, do you feel that somehow you as a visionary or as a futurist have the responsibility to change it in a direction? Do you feel that we all have that? Or, who owns that question?
I think we take a more lighthearted approach.
Good.
We just want to have fun in what we do and work on things that are interesting. But back to the earlier point about there only being big companies in our industry, I think there's a certain level of both opportunity and responsibility related to that, right? So I think we're one of the only teams that are able to attempt a company like this. So, one, it's an opportunity because if everybody is going to be focused on serving the needs of a broad spectrum of consumers, they're not going to be able to cover the needs of the niche very well. So it's a great opportunity for somebody to come in and try that. But it's also a responsibility. Because to be honest, the tech industry got really boring. The iPhone 15 and the 14, like there's not a big difference. And there's no, like 13, 12, it's like the pace of innovation is slowing down by a lot. So it's also a responsibility to, like, if we're not attempting this, if we're not trying to do something different, I don't think the big companies are going to move as fast.
So your ability to innovate, your agility is driven by your size and your newness to the market. How does that play out when you grow? How do you hold on to that agility and that drive to innovate? Because you will grow. I mean, I think we're seeing you grow. So do you think about how to maintain the energy and the ethos you have now as a scaling model, which is relevant, I think, to a lot of us in the room?
I think it has to do with culture, but it's easier said than done because I might say this now, and then if we get lucky and we become a very successful company in the future, maybe I'll have to eat my words. But I think it has to do with culture, right? Like what's important. If you look at Apple, Apple under Steve Jobs was very successful, and it was even more financially successful under Tim Cook. But the culture was very different. I think the previous Apple was focused more on user experience, innovation, looking at all the emerging technologies and figuring out how to package that into a really beautiful and simple to use product. Whereas the current Apple is very savvy in terms of business. How do we take this one product and configure it for different types of consumers, different sizes, different prices? It's also doing well financially, but it's just a very different culture.
So the distinction between being driven by innovation opportunity versus monetization opportunity.
Yeah, it's hard to strike a balance.
It,
right?
and I, of course, I know Apple is still obviously an iconic brand, but is that sort of what it comes down to, is maintaining the drive to innovate?
I think so.
Even if it isn't the most lucrative.
But when you get to that scale, there's just so many things to think about. You have shareholder pressure, board pressure, so it might not be as easy as we think it is.
And I think that sort of brings us, interestingly, to a new piece with this, which is about the rollout of AI and the engagement of all of this. And I've been thinking a lot about the risks that brings with it, security risks and data privacy risks. But for you as a company, too, it must be very challenging to grow when the tech is changing so quickly, too. How do you manage that? How do you stay ahead but not too far ahead?
Yeah, I think pacing is very important.
Yeah.
Like, I think everybody is very smart, but we all have different ideas on the pacing. Like, what's the right thing to do at the right time? If you go too far, then you might confuse and alienate the consumers because it's difficult to use or they're not ready for a new type of product. So pacing is really key. The way we think about it is, big change is going to come, but it's going to take time to unfold. So we don't want to introduce a new form factor in terms of hardware because people already love their phones. You know, 1 billion are sold every year, like we talked about. I think the main issue is the software on the mobile phones. It hasn't really changed for like 20 years. Even before iOS and Android, we still had like these apps, and you had to navigate around the apps, and there was some store to download more apps. I think with the advent of Gen AI, the user interface will change. But when we talk about user interface, I think we also need to take a very gradual approach. Because people, they love their apps. People love TikTok, YouTube, and all the apps. You can't just go from a current smartphone interface with apps to a brand new interface without apps in one go. So you have to take a gradual approach. And I think the approach is also not going to be productivity first. I think a lot of people are thinking about solving productivity challenges. I feel like those challenges are going to be solved as the technology becomes stronger and stronger. But the barrier to adoption is actually trust, right? So like a couple of years ago, a lot of companies were pushing the voice assistants, like Siri, like Alexa, and they never managed to gain the trust because you would ask it something and it would give you a really stupid answer, and then you would never use it again. So I think first it's about creating the trust, creating the relationship, creating something you want to talk to, maybe like a friend, and then gradually, as the technology matures, bring in capability, and gradually change the interface from the current one that we're all used to something more futuristic.
So this was exactly going to be my next question, was about adoption. So someone once made the point to me that we all have the phones are now the extension of our arm, and that it took us a long time to get to that point. So now don't break the mold. We've already all holding the phones. How do you think this all fits into the other emerging technologies, the AR and the VR pieces? Is it a bigger leap to get us to put something on our face than to revolutionize the thing we're already holding in our hands?
I think in the short term, alternative form factors are going to have limited scale. Because like, if you just look at the market, smartphone 1 billion.
Yeah.
These alternative products, at best, 1 million, right? It's like a huge difference in terms of the scale. But I think longer term, it's all going to be driven by the same OS in the background. So I interact with my OS on my smartphone. I leave it. I go to my computer. It picks up where I left off. My earbuds, my glasses.
Right.
But again, like, what's the most important product? I think we should focus on those first. And then if we can create a user base and ecosystem, actually, we don't have to make all the devices ourselves.
Right.
If you want to make glasses, then you can tap into, connect it to the rest of our ecosystem and our partners' products as well.
So do you view that as part of your business model, a very collaborative model that's about engaging with other partners? And I appreciate, we don't expect you to give away your future plans here, but I think that there has been such a sense of sort of siloing of these various products. Is that the future of this? Are we all going to have to learn to play in the same sandbox, or will it be one? What do you think? How does that play out?
I think the future will be a lot more collaborative than the mobile generation. I think in the mobile generation, a few companies took control and made most of the profits. And I think this is good for them, but it also made everybody else a lot more alert and a lot smarter. So I don't think the same model is going to work as well going forward. So I believe that it's going to be a lot more collaborative. We're definitely envisioning a future where we work with other hardware partners to also adopt the software that we build.
Well, I mean, I think for all of us as users, that's incredibly exciting because that, that obviously speaks to a model that will have greater cost reductions, greater accessibility issue. I mean, I think that's obviously wonderful to hear. You talked about the user experience a few minutes ago, and I want to go back to that. It's clear to me how the AI enhances the user experience. Can you talk me through a bit of the other advantages that the AI will bring into this personal computing space? Is it productivity? Is it creativity? What will we get as an end result as users that we don't have now because of the incorporation of the AI?
I think first of all, you have so much data on your devices.
Right.
Like, if the smartphone really opened up the permissions, it's got all your email, it's got all your photos. There's image recognition, so the computer can understand what the photos are to get a better sense of who you are. It's got your calendar, it's got your text messages, your WhatsApps. So theoretically, it can really get to know you on a deep level to then be able to deliver recommendations or actions that are tailored to you. I think the second step is also to learn where are you heading, what are your hopes and ambitions, and then nudge you towards getting there. But people, we don't like our computers to be our parents, like telling us, oh, don't watch TikTok, go study or go do work. So I think it has to, again, go back to that friend-like experience, that trust between the user and the computer, and a gradual nudging to the desired state. So I think to sum it up, our computers, and maybe computer is not the right word, maybe there will be another word in the future, it should make us the best version of ourselves, depending on what that is. It doesn't have to be about career. For some people, they just want to be great parents. Other people want to learn skiing and be really good at skiing, but like whatever we want to do, help us accomplish that.
I love this idea that it's an extension of yourself, that it, in other words, it's not trying to change you or control you or all the sort of scary things we think might happen, that in fact it's taking the core of you and allowing you to progress more quickly. I do have to say, though, when you talk about it knows your calendar, it knows your photos, it knows all of that, it does make people a little bit nervous. And I think this is what people are worried about. We were talking about the risks as a company to keeping up with this technology. Can you talk a bit about the regulatory piece and the security piece? How do you manage that? Do we need to, I mean, I think the tech is moving quicker than the regulations at this point. Do you feel that you're sort of trying to manage that piece, or is it?
I think that tech has to move first, but from a user perspective, we should be very transparent.
Yeah.
Actually, transparency is a word we've been talking about a lot recently, especially because of the exact reasons you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think because the pace of technology is picking up, and technology will do things that look more and more like magic, a lot of people are going to be afraid. I already see a lot of fear about AI. Is it going to take away our jobs? Is it going to control us? Are we going to live in the matrix? So I think it's more important than ever to be as transparent as possible. We already started trying different things. Like, we have a YouTube channel that's very active. I review other companies' phones, among other types of content. But we just want to give a transparent window to how we think as a company and how we work, because I think trust and transparency is going to be a scarcer and scarcer resource going forward. And also, it's something that a big company cannot really do, right? So I think it's going to be more important. It's something we're uniquely positioned to do. And also, the bigger competitors cannot really do due to their big PR teams or
Sure.
IR teams or whatnot.
I still think you're going to have your problem when you grow big, that you're going to have to figure out how to carry this ethos that you've grown, you know? So it's going to be an interesting balancing act for you as you grow. There's so much of a theme running throughout this: trust, it's a friend, it's transparent. Can you talk more about it specifically in your devices? How do you feel you're sort of showing that? How are you, what is it about your pieces that can give us that sense of, I have some control, I have some stake in this?
I think you can begin to see some small signs, but it's not robust because we've been really focused on the back end of our business in the last couple of years. But if you look at our current products, you see that, first of all, the design is transparent.
Yeah.
You can see into the engineering behind the product. We also, on the hardware side, on our phones, we have this interface called the glyph interface. So the lights on the back of the phone, it's meant to, in certain scenarios, enable you to put your phone down, but it still notifies you of what's going on, things that are important to you. You can set it up for yourself. For instance, if you call a food delivery, you can see how close it is to you without checking the screen. On our OS, we're trying to get people to a more kind of thoughtful state of mind, less distracted state of mind. So you can turn on a monochrome OS design. So everything is black and white or monochromatic. And I think color is like a tool for branding, right? Like, different brands you associate with different colors. So by removing brands' ability to communicate with you subconsciously through color, we're giving some power back to to the user. So those are some of the things that we've been doing on the product side, but I think there's a lot more.
It's fascinating. I think the moment you said the thing about the phone being able to be turned over, it's interesting to me that it seems that part of what you're driving towards is actually giving us a bit of freedom from the phone and allowing us to have access to the magic, but also not to be quite so tied to it. Is that right? Is it about helping people live sort of with the understanding we're all forever now going to be connected to devices, there's no going back? Is it about finding a healthier balance a little bit?
I think at the core it's about the fact that technology should help us.
Right.
It should make us better, it should enable us, just like all the technology in the past. But the problem is, in our current state of affairs in our industry, it's actually not making us better. Like, we've been discussing, is the product or are you the product? Because currently when people buy the phones, they're actually the product.
Right.
Social media, they just feed you the next thing you want to watch to get that little dopamine hit, so you're addicted. The reason is to make you spend more time so they can sell more advertising. Device makers try and lock you down into their ecosystem, so it's harder to switch to other companies' products. So I think that's not very healthy. It's not very good for people, it's good for corporations. So we just want to get technology back to a place where, back on track, right? It empowers people.
I mean, it's incredibly inspiring and exciting. I think we're all increasingly aware that the product really is data to a large extent, and that we are sources of data. So that in engaging with the phone, are we feeding the phone, or is the phone? And I love the idea that this gets us back to being we're the consumer. Like, in other words, we're the ones that are choosing what we see. So I don't want to put you on the spot, and I was about to say we won't hold you to it, but I actually think maybe I will a little bit. If you were looking 5 years ahead, and as I assume, I think is clear it will, nothing has continued to thrive. What is the device you're making then? What does that look like when you've had 5 more years of integration of AI, regulatory advancements, potentially regulatory setbacks too? What do you think we're 5 years from now? What are we all going to have in our bags?
Our smartphones. I think the hardware will only improve iteratively. It will be a little bit better, a little bit faster, better camera, better battery, but I think the software will be completely different. I think the operating system will be, in 5 years, I don't think we made the full transition from app-based operating systems to post-app, but we will have made a lot of progress. Long term, it's going to be like the apps are going to go away for sure. I think in 5 years, it's going to be a hybrid. And
just to elaborate quickly, the apps go away because the phone becomes the one source of everything, or the device?
Yeah, I think the analogy is like, what if your phone is one app to do everything for you, right? So you just you can type or talk to it, or press some buttons, and it already knows what you want to do. It knows you very well, your past, the future that you would like to build, and it just gets you there.
It's amazing. Can you give us, I know you've had your big announcement, but just before we close, can you give us a bit of a future picture for nothing? We're all eagerly hoping for another phone. Can you talk to us a bit about what the next even 18 months hold for you?
Yeah, I think we're standing on the cusp, not just us as a company, but our entire industry on the cusp of a big change. Some companies are going to move very fast and aggressively. Actually, I'm very impressed by what Satya at Microsoft has been doing. Mm-hmm. Very aggressive, making all the right moves. And I think it's worth studying the past, studying history. With all major technological shifts, the playing cards will reshuffle, right? So not too long ago, companies like Nokia and BlackBerry seemed unstoppable.
That's true.
They would always be the dominant players. And today they're not. When we went from feature phone to smartphone, they didn't really adapt fast enough. And even longer time ago, when Silicon Valley just started, Hewlett-Packard was one of the major companies, right? They kind of created Silicon Valley. But with each major generational shift of technology, it's very seldom that the biggest and the most well-resourced company will come out on top. So what I keep thinking about is, what can we learn from the history, and how can we navigate the next 18 months? Because I think it's going to be very important the next 18 months to come out ahead.
I think it's a wonderful reminder that we sit here today talking about the future and looking at these things that are extraordinary and exciting, but that the history is also still relevant, and that we have to sort of incorporate the lessons learned from the past 20 years, 100 years, history of how invention of agriculture, to look at how we sort of inform ourselves on all that's to come. So what I think we've really heard from you today, and what I want everyone to take away, is this notion of transparency, this notion of trust, this notion that the device is going to become our friend and our ally as opposed to our overlord, and that we can build something where we, as the consumers, feel we have control, but also feel we're being improved and gaining access to stuff. And that's really, I think what you're building, and I think is a incredibly exciting thing for all of us. I'm certainly gonna be following it eagerly myself. So thank you, Carl, to everyone for being here.
Thank you.
It's an amazing, amazing moment for you and for all of us. And thank you to KL20 for having us and for hosting such a fabulous event. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Leslie, for moderating the session. Let's have a quick photograph to wrap up the session with both of you. Once again, thank you, Kao Pei, CEO of Nothing. Very inspirational. I hope a lot of startups that are here today can benefit from that conversation as you move forward into your brave journeys ahead. Now, coming up next, he is an individual with 15 years of experience in investment, and he will be taking us through a very special session, short, sweet, succinct, and to the point. He was partner at Kungtong Capital, worked for Qualcomm and Broadcom, both of the world's top chip companies engaging in technology development and management, and he's also worked for McKinsey. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, please now welcome to the stage to share with us Tony Zhang, partner now with